Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great symphonies by the numbers. 16 fabulous symphonies, number 6. 6. Yes, we're up to number 6. Can you believe it already? And we're still up with 16 of them. I don't know how long I can continue to do 16 of them, because I'm not just trying to do 16 just because they exist, which I noticed in some of your comments seems to be the only criterion for selecting them. Ha! Gotcha! No, these are 16 great symphonies that exist. And I would ask all of you to try and keep that single criterion in mind. Not do I like it or not, but is it a great symphony, which is a very different thing, isn't it? Of course, that begs the question of what greatness is, which we could argue about ceaselessly. But surely, my dear friends, there is more to it than just the fact that you might enjoy it. I enjoy tons of music that I would never put on a list of greatness. It's just enjoyable music. It's wonderful. I may love it. It may give me shivers and make me feel warm and cuddly and snuggly and God knows what else. But great? I don't know. Anyway, here we have 6 unimpeachably great symphonies. 16, pardon me. In unimpeachably great symphonies, all number 6. And we start, of course, one of you already pointed this out, but I'd already written the list. So there, with Haydn. Finally, we get to start with Haydn. Usually we start with Beethoven, but no, we're starting with Haydn because his Symphony No. 6 is the first really popular one. Now, I think there are a lot of Haydn symphonies that do not have nicknames or that are numbered like number 13. Fabulous work. But, do you put it on the list? Well, you might not, because nobody knows it. Nobody knows what it is. But Haydn Symphony No. 6 is the first in the trilogy, Morning, Noon, and Night, 6, 7, and 8, that has been recorded many times that people know and listen to and play and love. And so, yes, number 6 begins with Haydn, even though music itself began with Haydn, at least at the classical period. And here it is, the Morning Symphony, which begins with a sunrise. It's like the dawn of music itself. It really is the dawn of the symphony, at least. The dawn of symphonic music. Here we go. We're on the way with Haydn Symphony No. 6. So, of course, that's where the list has to start. And only then can we get to Beethoven, the Pastoral Symphony, which was the piece that got me hooked on classical music. So I have adored it ever since that day, 55 years ago, I guess, when I took out my mother's album that had this Bruegel on the cover of The Harvest and said, I was just learning to read. I was like in first grade. I guess I was 6, maybe 7. No, 6. And I mouthed out the word pastoral, and I said to my mother, what is that? What does it mean? And she said, put on the record and look at the painting. And I put on the record and I looked at the painting of Bruegel's The Harvest or The Harvesters, whatever it was called. And I just went, oh, wow, music can do that. Holy mackerel. That's amazing. I heard what was in that painting. It blew my mind. And that was Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony and my mother. Thank you, Mom. I know she'll be watching this at some point because she watches all of these things. The poor woman. Oh, anyway, there you go. Beethoven Symphony No. 6 has to be there. Next, Brookner Symphony No. 6. Yeah, we've been going on Brookner since number 4. And he's going to be appearing, I think, in most of the rest of these. I think most of them, maybe not all of them. We'll have to see. But Brookner 6 is another one of those impeccably great Bruckner symphonies that only has one version because he never revised it, and it doesn't need to be touched by anybody for any reason. Are you listening, International Bruckner Gesellschaft? Keep your disgusting hands off of Bruckner's Sixth Symphony. I don't care if you find a sketch that he wrote when he was sitting in the bathroom somewhere in Upper Austria, St. Florian, or whatever you may know, or he noodled something on a napkin. Leave it alone. It's perfect just the way it is. So Bruckner Sixth has to be on the list. Next, Prokofiev. We need a change of pace from all those Germans, don't you think? Prokofiev's Sixth is considered by many to be his greatest symphony. I would not argue with that. It's a fascinating work. It's a difficult work. It's a wartime work. It's disturbing music, especially the first couple of movements. The finale, tries to be happy. Has that. Because it's a very militant piece, and the finale tries to make light of the militancy, but it can't, and in the end it comes back really scarily. It's a wonderfully emotionally ambivalent piece, but the first two movements are tough. They are sort of long-limbed, somewhat loosely organized, very, very gripping, rising to really heart-wrenching climaxes. And the middle movement, it only has 3 movements, and the middle movement is strange. It moves through a series of musical landscapes that are alternately very bittersweet and poignant and defiant and lyrical. And oh gosh, it's interesting. Really interesting piece. Very different from the Fifth Symphony. The Fifth is far more populist in its tone than the Sixth is, but it's a very, very great work. After the Sixth, Nielsen. The Symphonia Semplice. I love the Symphonia Semplice. It's funny. It could have gone on my list of funny symphonies if it weren't that the first movement is heartbreaking. The first movement, they think, or people have proposed, describe, Nielsen having a heart attack or an attack of angina. And as someone who has had a heart attack, let me tell you, he got it. He just nails it. The climax of this symphony, when you hear that semitonal clash in the horns, that it's pain. It's just that it's that kind of pain. It's an amazing moment. It really, really is. And then, of course, after that, the music gets wackier and wackier as it goes. You've got the second movement, which is for winds and a trombone that keeps playing glissandi. It's going to do 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 boop 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 do do boop boop do do boop. The drum goes wow like that. It's very, very funny. Then you have a quasi-slow movement that's very short and attempts to be serious. And the finale is a theme in variations on a 12-note theme, which is still very tonal. It's da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that's the end of it. See, what I do is atonal, whether I want it to be or not. But it's a wonderful, wonderful tune, and the variations are just delightful. There's a crazy waltz, a wacky bass drum thwacks in it, and then a totally insane coda. It ends with a snarl from the bassoons. It's a wonderful piece. It's still a piece that a lot of people don't get, because of its humor, of course, and because of its sheer strangeness. And I love it. I just love it. One of the great Sixth Symphonies. And after Nielsen, Piston. The Piston Sixth is the one symphony by him that people really, really, sort of knew. And they knew it because it was written for the Boston Symphony, and Charles Munch recorded it. And after Charles Munch recorded it, a bunch of other people recorded it. So there are about 4 or 5 versions of the Sixth Symphony out there. It's marvelous. The finale, which is very Western and American sounding, I used to use as my theme music when I had my radio show on WJHU in Baltimore when I was in college. It makes great ringtone music as well, now that we have those, which of course we didn't have in those days. It's a beautiful symphony, wonderfully tuneful, brilliantly scored, written with real love. And it's like all Piston symphonies. It's short. It's 25 minutes long and 4 movements, very much to the point, with an elegiac slow movement with a gorgeous cello solo in it. It's really, really lovely music. And it deserves all the attention you can give it. It may be Piston's symphonic masterpiece, of course, had it not been for the fourth, which is just as good, and the second, which is marvelous. He was a very good composer. He really was. Then Martinu, Symphony No. 6. Now, Martinu has not appeared here since we talked about his first symphony. The Martinu Sixth was also written for the Boston Symphony, and it appeared on the other side of the album with the Piston Sixth, with Charles Munch and the Boston Symphony. It is a huge masterpiece, a great piece in 3 movements, full of those lush, exotic, strange, Martinusian, you might call them Martian sounds. It's otherworldly music. It really is. And twitchy music, very nervous and anxious. All of Martinu's symphonies belong on these lists. And the only reason I didn't include them all is because I wanted to include other people too. And I didn't think it was fair to take up all the slots with all 6 Martinu symphonies, but they could all easily have been on these lists because they are magnificent works. Absolutely magnificent works. Then after Martinu Symphony No. 6, Vaughan Williams. After the incredibly pretty and transfigurative and metaphysical No. 5, we're back down to earth with No. 6, or at least half of it, because it begins with harshness and craziness, just like No. 4 did. A really wild, vicious, nasty maelstrom of music at the beginning, which is later transfigured into a very, very lovely theme, immediately swallowed up, followed by a militant second movement based on a simple rhythm, dun dun dun, do 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 do, do 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 do. It's wonderfully creepy, very, very creepy. And then there's like a chorale in the middle, and then this military rhythm keeps pounding and pounding and pounding till it makes a huge climax, followed by a nasty scherzo with snarly. It's very similar to the rondo burlesque, actually, from Mahler's Ninth Symphony. You know, it's got, of course, it has a saxophone playing like dance music and whatnot, but there's that same sort of bitter, sardonic edge to the music. Vaughan Williams actually had one of the most obnoxious comments ever about Mahler. It was really snide and stupid. It was something like, intimate acquaintance with the executive side of musicianship made even Mahler into a tolerable imitation of a composer. Yes. Well, screw him. It's not the point. They were both great composers in their own way, and that's why it's always a mistake when you quote one composer talking about another. They get very catty, and there's no reason that one has any qualification to talk about another. There really isn't, unless that's what they do, like, Ned Rorem, who's an essayist, but he's professionally catty. He's also, Anyway, let's just say that the Vaughan Williams Sixth is hopping along like the Mahler Rondo Burlesque, so take that, Rafe, and then ends with this very spacey, quasi-fugal, desolate emptiness that dissolves into nothingness. It's marvelous, absolutely marvelous. It's a tough piece to program because it's definitely not a second half piece. You don't want people to go home after hearing that. So usually it goes on the first half, and it usually works pretty well that way. It's okay if you do it like that. Then we have Laszlo Laita, Symphony No. 6. I did a video about Laita, and, the names are all here. Look him up. He's a great Hungarian symphonist, a compatriot of Bartók and Kodály. He wrote 9 symphonies, actually more. 9 numbered symphonies, and there are a couple others. He's a fabulous composer, first-class orchestral musician. Wonderful scoring, lots of percussion, and the Sixth Symphony is really haunting and beautiful. A gorgeous work, which you can listen to a sample of in the video I did about that piece. His symphonies also belong, several of them, in this collection of stuff. I could have put his 4th in. That would have been very tempting. It's good music, good, solid, intelligent, expressive, brilliant, original music, and deserves as much play as we can give it. After Laita, we need to talk about you-know-who. Yes, Sibelius. The Sibelius Sixth, one of his most ethereal and least popular symphonies, and I think it's glorious. I love the Sixth. It is a little bit elusive expressively, and it does run into Sibelius's characteristic habit of not knowing when to stop or how to stop. He knows when. It's the how. He gets so much momentum going, and it's flowing so wonderfully that he's not sure how to make it end. It wants to keep going. It really does. And the Sixth, at least, it has the excuse that if the ending of the first movement, for example, and the second movement sounds a little perfunctory, it's because the music moves on to another movement, to something else. And the entire ending of the symphony, of course, is very, very quiet and very, very stern in its way. Cool. Sibelius described it as a cool glass of spring water. And that is very much what the symphony is. It's refreshing in its way, but also expressively a little bit on the cool side. And I like it. I just think it's nifty. Beautiful, beautiful music. After Sibelius, here's one that a composer a bunch of you have mentioned a few times who has not appeared yet, but I waited. I waited for now. Edmund Rubra. Who is Edmund Rubra? Well, Rubra wrote a bunch of symphonies as well, like everybody else out there. I think he wrote 10 of them, all told. The last one is a chamber symphony, I believe. I have to go back and look. But Rubra's problem was that he was a contrapuntist more than anything else, and he was not terribly interested in orchestral sound as such. And a lot of his scoring in his earlier symphonies is kind of thick and muddy and rather strange. And I like the music. It's as music, but as orchestral music, it doesn't really reach out and grab you that easily. It's interesting music, I think, more than like rewarding. And he really got going with his Fifth Symphony. After the Fourth, starting with the Fifth, you get some really good stuff. And I think the Sixth is marvelous. It has a distinct relationship to Sibelius's Third. Rubra was heavily influenced by Sibelius. And even though Sibelius was not a contrapuntist, but if you listen to the opening of Rubra's Sixth, once the allegro gets going, it has a slow introduction. But it starts up with ya da 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 dum ba da dum ba dum ba da da. It sounds with these sort of drone bass things underneath. It sounds a lot like Sibelius's Third. It's a beautiful symphony, a wonderful symphony that is it for me. It was the gateway into the rest of his music, because after I heard the Sixth, I was able to go back and gradually assimilate the others and also go forward. And I do think he's a major voice, and I think he's a very, very fine composer. But orchestration was not his bag. And in a way, I like that. I mean, I like it when there are composers who have strengths and weaknesses and who don't just take everything for granted and do things in a formulaic way. Rubra had to find his voice, and he had to find his voice as an orchestral composer. And it took him time. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the Sixth Symphony, I think, is... Well, the Fifth, too, it's very good, but the Sixth is really where he found himself. And you should find him there, too, because it's a lovely, lovely work. So next, well, Shostakovich. We've got to do the Shostakovich. His middle period Shostakovich is great music all the way through. Even the iffy pieces like the Leningrad Symphony and things, it's still written at a level that very few other composers were attempting, number one. And number two, even if not all of it is as great as all of the rest of it, it still has so much personality. It has Shostakovich's personal voice in everything he did. And the Sixth is a wonderful work, a very formally interesting work. And I do refer you to my video on the Sixth Symphony, where I talk about it, and I talk about how it's put together, because it's very interesting. It has some wonderful cyclical elements, some motivic sharing between movements, but the actual movements, it begins with a big, long, scary adagio, and then has two quick movements. One, a bittersweet scherzo, and the other, a opera buffa, often Bachian gallop-like finale. And it's tremendous fun, but once you get to know what it's doing, it becomes all the greater. It's a fantastic piece. And I happened to play it a couple of times, and it was fun to do. I even got to play the Celesta part. Of course, the Celesta only plays one note. Oops, it's a trill, actually. You go like this for about a long time till your fingers are getting tired and a little bit beyond, and then you stop. And that's the Celesta part in Shostakovich's Sixth, but I know it by heart. I know it well. And after Shostakovich's Sixth, we have to go back to Tubin. Tubin's Sixth Symphony, probably his greatest symphony as well. What a terrific piece. Oh my goodness. It has like a saxophone in it, I think. There's a saxophone and a woodblock that goes click in strange places. It's a wonderful, wonderful work. It has a great central scherzo, a vicious, nasty, machine-like, almost Prokofievian, Prokofievalicious middle movement. Great piece. Absolutely amazing piece of music. And the Bis recording, you got to get the Bis recording. It's coupled, I think, with the Second Symphony, if you don't have the complete box of all the Tubin symphonies. Holy mackerel, it's sonically unbelievable. It's with Nimi Järvi, and it'll knock your socks off. So will the second, by the way, which is gorgeous. Beautiful work. Again, there are more Tubin symphonies that I could have put in these lists. Some of you have mentioned them, but I'm happy with the picks because, like I said, I'm trying not to go crazy on any one composer, except for the ones I have to, like Beethoven, for example. And Brahms. You have to mention a certain number of them. I mean, I left out Brahms' second and included all the others, but I left out the second. You people went crazy. It's like, how dare you? Oh my God! So some, we see there's a lot of pushback from the traditional musical circles people who think that there is a canon of great classical music that must be mentioned no matter what. But, I don't really feel that way particularly. I think that we should talk about as many different composers as we can because you never know what's going to hit you. And once you know one composer and a couple works, you have all you need to listen to more things by that composer. So we don't need to talk about everything. But in any case, Tubin definitely deserves a couple of mentions at least because he really was first class. And after Tubin Sixth, Dvorak Sixth. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful symphony. Do I need to say anything else about it? Really, do I? No. It's just, we all love it. It's glorious. It supposedly has something somewhat similar to Brahms' Second Symphony, which is also in D major. I don't really think so that much. There's like a little similarity at the beginning of the finale, for example, but it's pure Dvorak. Wonderful, wonderful Dvorak, and full of the most gorgeous tunes. Oh my God, it's beautiful, with a wonderful Czech folk-like Furiant scherzo. That's a dance, by the way, the Furiant. Da 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 dum ba da dum bum ba da dum ba da 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 dum ba da dum bum ba da dum da 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 dum ba da dum. It features offbeat syncopations in 3/4 time or something like that. It's just wonderful. So after the Dvorak Sixth, well, we're getting to the end. Only two left. Holy mackerel! Who do you think they're going to be? Which two are going to be included? Well, Mahler. Of course, we have to have Mahler. How could you live without Mahler's Sixth? Wow, the great tragic symphony. Oh, it's so powerful and so incredibly gripping and gut-wrenching. It's already on my list, of course, of the most emotionally gut-wrenching symphonies ever in the history of mankind. And it's just a miracle. Even if most people now are getting the inner movements in the wrong order, the scherzo should come second, not third. It should be first movement, scherzo, andante, finale. That's the way it should go, for too many reasons to discuss here. I've written about it. I've made videos about it. The International Mahler Gesellschaft has screwed it up completely in their latest critical edition by doing it the other way. Oh, that was such a stupid move. But they did it because they felt they had to, because it was different from what the other people did in the previous critical edition. I am very curious to see what happens in the new Breitkopf and Hertel edition, what they say about it. Because really the only thing you can say about it is that Mahler never made up his mind and every conductor should choose. Frankly, I mean, that's the honest answer. But I think musically speaking, the people who do the scherzo second definitely have it righter than the people who do it third. But Mahler's Sixth has got to be in the list of great sixths. Holy mackerel, just that finale with the sledgehammers and the cowbells and oh God, it's so amazing. And it's one of the few symphonies that's tragic in the classical sense. That is, it represents the triumph of fate over human striving. And the result of that is indeed cathartic. It purges you of all negative emotions. And when it's over, you just feel fabulous. You just want to do it all over again, no matter how grim it might be along the way. It is a restorative piece of music. a positive piece of music, believe it or not. It shows you that those ancient Greeks were not fooling around. They knew what they were doing when they invented tragedy. It really worked. So there you go. I mean, there are other sad symphonies and dismal symphonies and depressing symphonies, but genuine Greek tragic type symphonies, well, very, very few. And Mahler is the greatest of them all, hands down. So Mahler Sixth, and then last but not least, you know which one we're still missing. Have you been keeping track? Have you been counting? It's the Sixth Symphony, the Sixth, Tchaikovsky, the Pathétique, the one. It's like the Sixth. When you say the Sixth, if you're not talking about Beethoven, you're talking about Tchaikovsky. I mean, the Pathétique is so directly expressive. Now, there's not tragedy. That's despair. It ends in a mood of complete black, despairing misery. And of course, Tchaikovsky was dead just a few days after the premiere. So we know why it was so sad. But it really is, oof, baby. I can't listen to it that often. I can't actually. I find it too much of a journey. It's really an epic piece of emotionally gut-wrenching, hand-wringing, it puts you through the meat grinder emotionally. And when it's over, you just feel, oh boy, that was something. Of course, you can end a concert with the Pathétique. That is no way. It's not like the which one here, the who's he what's it the Vaughan Williams, which you don't want to end a concert with. Tchaikovsky you do, because the Vaughan Williams ends in outer space somewhere. It leaves you hanging. The Pathétique symphony leaves nothing unsaid. Its finality is absolute, and the idea of playing something afterwards, is just not happening. I remember when Russian orchestras used to tour the U.S., so they would play the Pathétique on the second half. And then, of course, because they were on tour and because it was, a big deal and they'd always get a standing ovation, they had to do encores. And you just go, no, an encore. It's like, oh, Tchaikovsky's Pathétique has just been sucked away into the black pit of nothingness. And then you get to hear the Lezginka from Khachaturian's Gaina ballet, and it's like, no, please. But, that's concert life. The Pathétique still did its thing every time. An extraordinary piece, the great Symphony No. 6, I still think it is. It really is. And it was, of course, Tchaikovsky's last. I do not count the incomplete seventh, which is a piece of nonsense, even in its restored version. But the sixth is really, if there were ever an ending to a symphonic legacy, that's it. And it's the end of my list of great symphonies, No. 6. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. No. 7's up next. Wish me luck. It's already done, actually, I have to tell you. So it's already done. But we'll see what's on it. Take care.